So, if you are a fan of space lasers, then this is the Bazaar challenge for you. Welcome to yet another Bazaar build out of context. This is where I challenge you, my lovely viewers, to come up with a build in a short span of time using a specific item as chosen by the actual developers of the game, and it is going to be completely out of context. That is a sort of set of challenges that we put around this that make things very, very difficult. You are not allowed to use, or at least I will not be considering, any type of scaling that the item will have because it is completely out of context. I'm going to assume that this is just in battle as it is, no benefits applied. That also means I'm not really going to be considering any hero skills or hero stats. You have to do this without any of those things. And even without all of those things, this build is absolutely crazy. How does, I don't know, multiple hundreds of damage sound to you? How does multiple hundreds of damage almost per second? It's about 50 damage per second. How does that sound? Does that sound beatable to you? I don't think that sounds beatable to me. Let's see how he did it. So what do we have here? We have a stealth build using the space laser. Now, I'm going to quickly, I think, go over what Space Laser does, because that is the primary item that has been built around here. But Space Laser isn't until the very end of the build, which will be up there. So we'll go over it properly at the end. I just want to quickly cover what it does right now. So, Space Laser is a large weapon that every 50 seconds giant cooldown deals 600 damage. It's passive when you gain altitude. Advance this by 2 seconds. So the way this is going to work is you're going to want to be gaining altitude regularly to chop down at that massive cooldown of 50 seconds, chopping 2 seconds off every single time to try and get out that massive amount of 600 damage that probably, almost definitely, unless you're against a Pygmalion, will end the fight. So let's see how this build does it. So, first things first, or first item up, we have the Jetpack. Every 7 seconds, this small vehicle gains 6 altitude and 6 shield. This is kind of doing what it says on the tin. It's going to give us that little boost to our altitude, which means we are gaining altitude. It's going to trigger Space Laser, 2 seconds off the cooldown already. So we're 7 seconds in, and Space Laser has charged 9 seconds. Let's try and keep ahead of that number. Next item up, the Feather. Every 8 seconds, gain 4 altitude, and it has a little bonus. When it takes off, it gains 2 regeneration. So that 2 regeneration would have kicked in at the 5 second mark, as we'll see in a minute. However, it is another 4 seconds of 4 altitude rather. It is another instance of gaining altitude, so that's another 2 seconds off Space Laser. We're gonna have to recalculate as well, because I'm seeing some smaller cooldowns in the middle of this, as we're gonna see with our next item. Those 2 items, they kind of do what they say, do what this says in the tin. This entire build is basically, I'll get to it. This entire build is built around the last 2 items in it, so you're gonna have to stick with me for a minute. Birdcage, next up, we're gonna go quick fire through these ones. Every 4 seconds, this medium item gains 2 altitude and 2 speed. And then at the start of the day, increases item's value by the number of items you own. This is like a 2-parter thing. This is one of the first items that actually does something else to the build or gives you more options. This build is mostly stacked to deal one thing. It's one of those builds that is kind of difficult to build into because you need to assemble all these little pieces that don't necessarily do that much together, and then the build ticks. However, the Birdcage is one of those that can kind of slot in anywhere because it's passive. It has a useful passive. At the start of this day, increase the item's value by the number of items you own. We own, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items. So this is going to be a 10 gold item after just 1 day of having it. It's going to be a 17 gold item the next day. And of course, we're later on to the build here, so, in the game here, so there's only going to be a couple of days left. But selling this for 17 gold to buy an upgrade to Space Laser, which costs 12 gold by the way, making it shiny, and having 5 gold spare to replace your Birdcage, yeah, That's a pretty useful item if you ask me. And again, giving us more altitude and giving us speed. Speed is absolutely key for bringing the Space Laser's cooldown down, because it increases your charge speed rather than reducing your cooldown. That is an important distinction, because reducing your cooldown, let's say we reduced Space Laser's cooldown by 50%, we cut it down to a 25-second cooldown. Well, in theory, you would still need it to trigger once before it then had a 25-second cooldown, so it would still take 50 seconds to go off. Whereas speed continually makes it charge faster. We get 2 speed, suddenly it's charging 2 speed faster. It's small increments, but it all adds up. The next item along is the rocket drone. This small weapon vehicle drone, every 6 seconds, using up one of its 5 ammo, deals 5 damage and gains 5 altitude. So another quick firing, but only 5 times, so 30 seconds of use you get out of rocket drone basically, is going to gain altitude, so another 2 seconds off Space Laser's cooldown, and start to deal some damage. This is some chip damage, we haven't had any of this yet. This may be important, but honestly, chip damage, I don't know how important that's going to be unless you're against builds that deal damage off of their shielding, like the Pygmalion Skyscraper builds. However, it is just a nice item, and with it having so many keywords, weapon, vehicle, and drone, there's not going to be many builds that you can't use the rocket drone in. Because if you have a vehicle build, it can go in. If you have a drone build, it can go in. A weapon build, it can go in. And this is none of those. This is an altitude build. It can go in altitude builds because it gains 5 altitude every 6 seconds. Pretty strong item. Nearly as strong. Actually, maybe as strong, but I like this item. I feel like it fits really well in a lot of builds just because of how simple and plain it is Goggles. Goggles is a small piece of gear, I would imagine, and every 5 seconds, it gains 1 altitude. Just 1. Its passive is when you take off or land, adjacent weapons get +2 damage for this fight. In this case, the other adjacent thing isn't a weapon, so the only thing we're buffing is rocket drone. But the important thing is that every 5 seconds, it's 1 altitude. It's a little bit like Birdcage, only on a smaller item. You just that quick little burst of altitude. 5 seconds, 1 altitude. 2 seconds off your Space Laser cooldown. Between that and Birdcage, Space Laser is going to charge fast. So, these, 5 items were our altitude gaining items. These were the items that were going to charge Space Laser quickly. So, let's see how quick these items by themselves, there's still 1 item left for those of you counting, can speed up Space Laser. So, at 5 seconds, Goggles charge it. 4 seconds Birdcage will go, which is 2 seconds off. At 5 seconds, Goggles will go, which is 4 seconds off. At 6 seconds, Rocket Drone. 7 seconds, Jetpack. 8 seconds, Feather and Birdcage again. At 9 seconds, nothing happens. 10 seconds, Goggles goes off. 11 seconds, nothing happens. 12 seconds, Rocket Drone and Birdcage. So that's already 9 instances of altitude going up, which is 18 seconds off the cooldown. And we are at 12 seconds. Not bad. In 12 seconds, we knocked off 18 seconds of cooldown. I'm going to stop there. No, I'm not. I'm going to finish this, but that's an important place to stop. 13 seconds, nothing. 14 seconds, Jetpack. 15 seconds, Goggles. We're on 11 now. 16 seconds, Birdcage and Feather. 17 seconds, nothing. 18 seconds, Rocket Drone. 19 seconds, nothing. 20 seconds, Goggle and Birdcage. That's 26. Sorry, that's 26. That's 16 times 2. That's 32 seconds. And we just got the 20. So at this point, at the 20-second mark, so in 20 seconds, those 5 items alone will trigger Space Laser. 20 seconds and Space Laser triggers, dealing 600 damage. You have 20 seconds to beat this build before it annihilates you. Or at least that would be the case if it wasn't for the Red Lantern. And this is the item that brings this entire build together and just makes it so much better, if that were possible. Red Lantern is a small item that every 6 seconds triggers its ability, which does 1 second of freeze to all of your items to its left, but charges the right item by 2 seconds for each item frozen this way. So let's recalculate. So it was 20 seconds last time. Birdcage at 4 seconds. 2 seconds off Space Laser's cooldown. Goggles, 5 seconds, another 2 seconds. Rocket Drone, another 2 seconds. Then Red Lantern triggers. Everything else is delayed by 1 second. The maths is going to get real freaking weird from here. I might struggle. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's another 10 seconds. So we're at 13 already. Within 6 seconds, we have knocked off 26 seconds of cooldown from Space Laser. We then wait another second, and nothing happens. At 8 seconds, Jetpack triggers. At 9 seconds, Feather and Birdcage. 10 seconds, nothing. 11 seconds, Goggles. And we've currently done 34. We're getting close. At 12 seconds, because Red Lantern doesn't freeze itself, Red Lantern then triggers again. So we've currently done 34 seconds of effectively haste, or like advance to Space Laser, plus the 11 seconds of time. So we're very nearly there. And then at 12 seconds, Red Lantern triggers again and instantly charges Space Laser. So with Red Lantern, you have 12 seconds to defeat this build before it deals 600 damage. That is not okay. All the while, by the way, it's gaining speed from Birdcage. Maybe you bought some speed as well. What? And then by the time 24 seconds comes around, by the way, that's before Sandstorm. 24 seconds? I mean, it's probably better. But at 24 seconds, it triggers again. If by some crazy thing, they survive the first hit, maybe you're playing against Estelle, and her like lightning rod totem pole thing triggers, right? Just before, and she becomes immune to damage. Oh no. Then at 24 seconds, they're still dead. Or if you're against a Pygmalion with 1,000 health. In this day and age, it's pretty difficult. 24 seconds, that Pygmalion, that tanky build has to live and try and defeat you. Tanky Pygmalion typically needs the Sandstorm to beat you. This is going to trigger before the Sandstorm. If it's by some pure luck they survive, say they had 1,700 health, 1,800 health even, because we're going to be ticking it down a little bit with Rocket Drone. And 6 seconds into our Sandstorm, which isn't going to do enough damage to kill you, not even remotely, that's another 600 damage. This build deals hella crazy damage. Holy shit, Space Laser is nuts with the right build. Like, I obviously... Okay, I'll do it real quick. I'll go through things. The negative, I'll go through real quick. Space Laser, late game item, difficult to buy, it's going to be hard to get a hold of. All of these other items aren't really replacements for. You need the really small, really quick firing items that give you altitude, and Red Lantern. Without Red Lantern, it's still every 20 seconds, not too bad, but you still need all of these items to come together for this to work. So it is going to be difficult to build into, but just purely as a Bazaar build item context, this thing is unrivaled currently. The Gamesplay Greg rating for this build is like 7 out of 5. the Bazaar build's out of context rating for this build is going to have to be a 4 because it's so freaking difficult to build. But 4 out of 5 ain't bad, and I gave you a 7, so screw that other guy. Okay, there is hope, though. I showed how many times this thing was going to trigger and how deadly it is, but there is a chance. If you are familiar with control builds, then you know where I'm going with this. But for more, you're going to have to check out the next video where we go through the Frozen Camel build, potentially the only thing that can possibly beat the Space Laser.